Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we've got a deeply emotional and complex situation on our hands involving friendship, betrayal, and identity. It's a tough one, but I think it's an important conversation about how far is too far when it comes to protecting your own feelings, and when is it right to speak out. The question we're asking today is, AITA, am I the a-hole, for outing my best friend after he hooked up with me? Story begins. Okay, so let's dive into the details. The original poster, Opie, is a 22-year-old guy, and his best friend, Jake, is 23. They've known each other since high school and, at least on the surface, have always been close. But their relationship has always had a bit of a complicated dynamic, especially when it comes to Jake's attitude toward Opie's sexuality. Now, Jake is someone who identifies as straight. In the past, he's made jokes about Opie being gay. Nothing violent or explicitly hateful, but comments like, "You're lucky I'm secure in my masculinity, bro," or "Don't fall in love with me, haha." It's the kind of teasing that might seem harmless to some, but for OP, who has had a crush on Jake for years, it likely stung a little deeper than just casual jokes. The breakup and the hookup. Fast forward a bit, and Jake goes through a rough breakup with his girlfriend of 3 years. He's heartbroken, vulnerable, and turns to OP for support. They start hanging out more, and one night, after having a bit too much to drink, things get intimate. OP shares that Jake kissed him first, which totally shocked him, but he went with it. Why? Because, as OP admits, he's had a low-key crush on Jake for a while, and he's practically in love with him. One thing leads to another, and the two of them end up sleeping together. Now, here's where things take a sharp turn. The next morning, Jake completely freaks out. He apologizes, saying it was a mistake, that he was just drunk, and that he's definitely not gay. OP says he was fine with it, but deep down he's hurt. Not just because Jake brushed it off like it was nothing, but because Jake was clearly ashamed of what happened. For OP, this felt like a huge slap in the face, especially after having such an emotional experience with someone he's always cared about. Since that night, Jake has been distant. He hasn't really spoken to Opie about it, and every time Opie tries to bring it up, Jake shuts him down, telling him to forget it ever happened. To make matters worse, Opie feels like he was just used by Jake. It feels like Jake only turned to him in a moment of weakness after his breakup, and that Opie was nothing more than an experiment or a way for Jake to cope. The party incident. Now, things take a more dramatic turn at a party with mutual friends. Opie and Jake are there, and someone jokingly asks if the two of them have ever hooked up. Jake laughs it off and says, "No way, I'd never do anything with a guy." Then, in a moment of what seems to be defensive bravado, Jake adds something like, "I have standards. I'd never be that desperate." For Opie, this was a final straw. He's been hurt by Jake's attitude since the night they slept together, and hearing Jake act so dismissive of what happened, essentially mocking him and his feelings, was too much to bear. In a moment of anger and hurt, Opie blurts out, "Well, that's funny, because you didn't seem to have any standards last weekend." The room goes silent. Jake, furious, storms out of the party, and just like that, everyone now knows. The secret is out. And of course, this has caused a huge fallout between Opie and Jake. Jake hasn't spoken to Opie since, and Opie is left questioning whether he made the right choice in exposing what happened. The backlash and guilt. Now, this is where the conflict really heats up. Some of Opie's friends are saying he was out of line for outing Jake. They believe it was a betrayal, a violation of trust, and that Opie should have kept that moment between them private. But on the flip side, some of Opie's other friends are saying Jake had it coming. They think Jake was cruel to Opie by brushing him off, making him feel like an experiment, and even publicly humiliating him at the party. They argue that Jake shouldn't have treated Opie like that, and that Opie was just defending himself. In the aftermath, Opie is feeling a ton of guilt. He never wanted to hurt Jake, but at the same time, he's angry and hurt by how Jake has treated him. The question now is, did Opie cross the line by outing Jake? Or did Jake bring this on himself with his actions and treatment of Opie? The dilemma. Let's break this down. On one hand, Opie did share something very personal and intimate about Jake, something Jake wasn't ready to have out in the open. It was a vulnerable situation for Jake, and Opie revealing it in front of others could be seen as a betrayal of trust. No matter how Jake acted afterward, outing someone, especially in front of a group of friends, is a huge deal and can cause a lot of damage. But on the other hand, I can totally understand why Opie felt the need to say something. Jake humiliated him multiple times. First by acting like what happened didn't matter, then by mocking him at the party. For Opie, it must have felt like Jake wasn't just rejecting him, but actively trying to make him feel small, worthless, and embarrassed. In that context, outing Jake could almost be seen as Opie reclaiming his dignity and standing up for himself. The real question is, was there a better way for Opie to handle it? Could he have spoken to Jake privately, expressed his hurt, and gotten the closure he needed without making it public? Maybe, but in the heat of the moment, emotions can overwhelm us, and Opie clearly felt pushed to his breaking point. Conclusion. So, what do you think? Was Opie right to out Jake after everything that happened, or did he cross a line in a moment of anger and frustration? It's definitely a gray area, and there's no easy answer here. It's a tough situation, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate to feeling hurt by someone you care about and wondering how far is too far to stand up for yourself. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Opie did the right thing, or should he have kept the secret and found another way to heal? Chapter 7. Today, we have a very interesting and somewhat emotional dilemma. We're diving into a situation about relationships, expectations, self-care, and communication. So, let's break down this story and try to figure out who's in the right and who might need to take a step back. The question we're asking is, AITA for using a gift I bought for my wife instead of giving it to her. Story begins. All right, so here's the situation. Opie, the original poster, is married and his wife is currently in her second trimester of pregnancy. If you've ever been around someone who's pregnant, you know that pregnancy can come with a lot of physical discomfort, mood swings, and changes. In this case, Opie's wife has been asking for daily foot massages after he comes home from work. They typically sit together, watch her favorite TV shows, and Opie massages her feet as a way of bonding. Now, while Opie is more than willing to support his wife during this time, it's starting to take a toll on him. He mentions that he's feeling drained from doing the foot massages every day. It's not that he doesn't want to care for his wife, but after a long day of work, he'd also like to unwind in his own way. He knows that once the baby comes, things will only get more demanding, and he wants to preserve some time to recharge himself as well. So, in an effort to meet his wife's needs while also taking care of his own, Opie comes up with a thoughtful idea. For Black Friday, he buys her a foot massager. His intention is clear. Instead of spending his energy every night giving foot rubs, he's hoping the machine can take over and give his wife some relief. But when he gives her the gift, her reaction is not what he expected. She gets upset, like really upset. She starts crying, saying that she feels like he's turning his back on her. According to her, the foot massage wasn't just about the physical act. It was something they shared together, a bonding experience. She tells Opie that she'd rather he keep giving her massages instead of relying on a machine. Opie tries to validate her feelings and explain his reasoning. He gently suggests that they can bond in other ways, but this doesn't go over well. His wife keeps arguing, chasing him around, and even starts hyperventilating and crying. At this point, Opie is feeling a mix of confusion and frustration. It starts to feel less like a genuine emotional reaction and more like an attempt to punish him. Opie, feeling drained and overwhelmed, decides to take some space. He tells his wife he's going to retreat to the guest room until she calms down. His reasoning is that he doesn't want to have a conversation when emotions are running so high, and he doesn't want to say something hurtful in the heat of the moment. But instead of calming things down, this only escalates the situation. His wife gets angrier, and Opie closes the door to the guest room. The next day, things are still tense. His wife is giving him the silent treatment, refusing to engage with him. Opie feels like he doesn't need to earn her attention, especially when he feels that his own needs are being ignored. So, in a move that some might consider petty, Opie sets up the foot massager, gets comfortable on the couch with his own favorite show, and starts using the gift for himself. He feels like if his wife won't appreciate the thought behind the gift, he's going to enjoy it himself. At this point, Opie says that he's not doing this out of malice, but to demonstrate that his self-worth isn't entirely tied to his wife's approval of his gestures. He wanted to reclaim something for himself and show that her rejection wouldn't diminish his confidence in his own choices. He also wanted to make it clear that he wasn't going to keep sacrificing his own needs for her demands, especially when he felt her emotional reactions were becoming excessive or manipulative. The dilemma. Now, let's break this down. On one hand, Opie clearly had good intentions when he bought the foot massager. He wasn't trying to reject his wife. He was simply trying to find a solution that allowed both of them to meet their needs. It's clear that he's trying to show care and thoughtfulness. After all, buying a foot massager isn't exactly a selfish act. It's an attempt to ease the burden on both of them. But on the other hand, Opie's wife had an emotional reaction that wasn't just about the gift itself. It seems like the foot rubs were symbolic to her, a way for them to bond, to stay connected. Pregnancy is an emotional time, and sometimes physical touch and reassurance can be more about emotional intimacy than physical relief. For her, the foot massage wasn't just about relieving pain. It was a way to feel closer to Opie during a time when her body was changing, and she was likely feeling vulnerable. From her perspective, receiving a machine instead of Opie's hands might have felt like he was distancing himself, or that he wasn't prioritizing her emotional needs. That could have triggered a deeper fear of abandonment or not being supported the way she needs. Now, let's talk about the way things escalated. The silent treatment, the crying, the hyperventilating. It's clear that emotions were running high. But some people might argue that Opie's wife's reaction seemed disproportionate to the situation. It doesn't seem like Opie was trying to hurt her or reject her. He was just offering a practical solution. And yet, her emotional response created a lot of tension and pushed Opie into a defensive place where he felt he needed to reclaim something for himself. Opie's decision to use a massager himself might come across as petty, but it can also be seen as a form of self-preservation. He's tired of feeling like his needs are being ignored, and this was his way of asserting that he has boundaries too. Some might view this as a form of passive-aggressive retaliation, but others might say it's a reasonable reaction to a situation where Opie feels misunderstood and undervalued. Conclusion. So, the big question is, AITA for using the foot massager myself after my wife got upset? Honestly, it's a complicated situation. Opie had good intentions, but his wife's emotional needs were clearly not being fully acknowledged. Opie tried to offer a solution that he thought would work for both of them, but his wife's reaction showed how important that daily ritual was to her on an emotional level. Both of them are dealing with stress in different ways. Opie is overwhelmed and just trying to take care of himself after work, while his wife is navigating the emotional and physical challenges of pregnancy. There was a communication breakdown, and neither party seems to be fully hearing the other. But what's important is that Opie wants to feel valued too, and I think this situation calls for a deeper conversation about emotional intimacy, boundaries, and self-care. What do you think? Was Opie justified in using the gift for himself, or did he go too far? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Chapter 8. Grab a drink, get comfy, because today's story is going to be one for the books. This Thanksgiving, I had a front row seat to what could only be described as a culinary catastrophe mixed with family drama that could rival any reality TV show. I honestly feel like I just lived through a fever dream, and I'm still trying to process everything that happened. So buckle up, because you won't believe some of the things my sister brought to the table this year. Literally. Story begins. Okay, so let's rewind a bit. My sister and I, well, let's just say we don't always see eye to eye when it comes to, well, pretty much everything. But Thanksgiving? That's supposed to be a family affair, right? A time for togetherness, food, and no drama. That's what I was hoping for, at least. Unfortunately, my sister had other plans. She showed up early, way earlier than anyone expected, and I should have seen it coming. She wasn't just bringing the usual side dishes. No, no. She walked in like she was some kind of food celebrity, carrying 3 dishes plus a giant platter wrapped in foil, making a big production about what she called her trio experience. And as if that wasn't enough, she came in with a table runner and candles to set the mood for a creative dining experience. Like what? The table was already set, but she had to rearrange everything to make sure her creations took center stage. Honestly, I should have said something then, but I just wanted to get through the night without a scene. I tried to let it go, but looking back, that was my first mistake. The food. So, let's talk about the food. And I'm using the term food loosely here because what my sister brought was honestly something I still can't fully wrap my head around. First up, there was this glittery sweet potato mash. I'm sure it was supposed to look artistic, but the glitter wasn't even edible glitter. It was regular craft glitter. Yeah, you heard me. It tasted like sugar and sand, and one of the kids pointed out that it was crunchy, which was a red flag I ignored until I looked closer and realized the glitter wasn't meant to be eaten. I think my soul left my body for a second when that revelation hit. Next up was her cranberry and oyster relish. Oysters and cranberries together. Now, I'm no food critic, but this looked like someone accidentally spilled jam into a bowl of clam chowder. And the smell, you guys, was enough to make me lose my appetite for the rest of the evening. But that wasn't even the worst part. Oh no. The piece de resistance, her surprise centerpiece dish, was a turkey gelatin mold. Yes, you heard that right. She took ground turkey, mixed it with broth and seasonings, and turned it into a wobbly, translucent mold shaped like a turkey. She even garnished it with parsley and cherry tomatoes to make it festive. The table went silent when she unveiled it. Silent, except for my cousin, who couldn't hold back a cough that was clearly trying to cover up what I'm pretty sure was a laugh. The family reactions. Now, the real fun begins. My mom, who has this interesting soft spot for my sister, actually took a bite of the gelatin mold. I could see it in her eyes. Pure regret. She froze. She didn't say anything, but you could tell her soul was trying to exit her body. And of course, my sister, not picking up on the silent cues of despair around the table, decides this is the perfect moment for a speech about how Thanksgiving food is too boring and how she's trying to challenge our palates. She even had the audacity to call my perfectly fine ham and mashed potatoes uninspired. I just had to sit there and take it because, let's be honest, at that point, what could I say? She'd already crossed the line into a full-on meltdown. My aunt, who's usually the peacemaker, tried the gelatin mold, and I'm not exaggerating when I say she gagged. She tried to cover it up, but my sister saw it, and the situation took a turn for the worse. The drama. At this point, my sister completely lost it. She started yelling about how nobody in the family supports her and how we're all stuck in the past with our unoriginal food. And here's where things went from bad to worse. She accused me of sabotaging her dishes because I didn't hype them up enough for everyone, as if I had some sort of ulterior motive. I'm sorry, but how am I supposed to fake enthusiasm for a gelatin mold shaped like a turkey when I'm questioning my life choices? That's when my sister stormed out of the house in a dramatic fashion, not before delivering this parting line. You'll regret not appreciating my vision when I'm famous. Famous? For what? Ruining Thanksgiving. She left most of her dishes behind, and my cousin and I quietly threw them out after dinner. The aftermath. But here's the twist. Once my sister left, the rest of the night actually turned out better. My dad's emergency hem came through like the hero it was, and the rest of the table could finally breathe again. We actually enjoyed the evening without the constant tension of wondering what disaster my sister was going to bring next. Looking back, I'm not sure how we ended up here. I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything that went down. But I will say this, next year, we're either going to a restaurant or skipping Thanksgiving altogether, because I am not doing this again. The big question. Now, the big question. AITA for telling my sister she's not allowed to bring her homemade food to Thanksgiving because her cooking is ruining the meal? Honestly, at the time, I felt like it was a necessary move. I didn't want to create a scene, but after everything that went down, I'm wondering if maybe I was too harsh. I get that she has her vision, but there's a time and a place, you know? I don't think I'm the a-hole here, but I'm definitely curious about your thoughts. Chapter 9. I'm really going through it right now. And I'm coming to you all because I could really use some advice. This is one of those situations that's just messy. So let me break it down for you. I'm getting married next spring, and my sister just did something that has me questioning if I even want her at the wedding at all. Here's the thing. I love my sister, but she's crossed a line recently that has left me feeling completely torn. And right now, I'm stuck between keeping the peace and protecting my special day. Let's get into it. Story begins. So, a little background for you all. I'm 28, and I'm getting married next spring to my amazing fiancé. We've been together for 5 years, and things have always been great between our families. There's been some tension here and there, but overall, we've all gotten along well. My sister, on the other hand, she's 25, and while she's been through a lot since our parents' divorce a few years ago, she's always had this flair for drama. She loves being the center of attention, and I try to give her grace because I know she's going through her own struggles. But recently, she did something that really pushed me over the edge. The incident, a month ago, my fiancé's family hosted a small dinner to celebrate our engagement. The goal was simple. Bring both families together for a quiet evening to get to know each other better. My sister came along as part of my side of the family, and at first, everything was going smoothly. But then after a few glasses of wine, she announced, completely out of nowhere, that she was pregnant. Yes, you heard that right, pregnant. Now, this was a complete shock to everyone. Why? Well, for one, my sister doesn't have a partner. No one knew she was dating anyone, and yet here she was, passing around an ultrasound picture to prove it. As you can imagine, everyone was stunned. My fiancé's parents, who are very traditional, were visibly uncomfortable, and the whole vibe of the dinner just completely shifted. The conversation was no longer about us or our engagement. It was all about my sister and this pregnancy. After the dinner, my mom, looking kind of confused, asked my sister why she hadn't told any of us about this before. And here's the kicker. My sister laughed it off and said she wanted to surprise us. It wasn't until later, when I confronted her, that she admitted the truth. The ultrasound wasn't even hers. She had found it on Google. I'll say that again. She passed around a fake ultrasound that she pulled off the internet, and I honestly couldn't believe it. When I asked her why she'd do something like that, she said, I just wanted to lighten the mood, and that she felt left out of the attention on me and my fiancé. She even tried to brush it off as just a joke and said I was overreacting. And to top it off, she called me selfish for making a big deal over one little prank. My reaction. Now, let me just say, I was furious. This dinner wasn't about her. It wasn't about trying to make a spectacle or stealing the spotlight. It was a night for our families to come together, and she turned it into a complete circus. I felt embarrassed, not just for her, but for my fiancé's family too. They were uncomfortable, and I could tell that the whole mood of the night had shifted because of my sister's antics. My fiancé was upset too, but he's always supportive of me. So he told me he'd back whatever decision I made about my sister's involvement in the wedding. When I tried to talk to my sister about it, though, she acted like I was the one who was in the wrong. She just couldn't understand why I was upset. It was as though her behavior didn't even register as an issue in her mind. That's when I started to seriously question whether I even wanted her there at my wedding. I know that's a big decision, and it's not one I've taken lightly. But after that stunt, I honestly don't know if I can trust her not to pull something even worse on my special day. My family's reaction. Now, of course, my mom is on my sister's side. She's been defending her the whole time, saying I should just let it go because she's still young and will mature eventually. And part of me understands where my mom's coming from. My sister has been through a lot, and I get that she wants attention. But that doesn't mean she can just ruin everything for everyone else. I've tried to give her grace, but at this point, I'm starting to wonder if I've been too forgiving. And here's where things get even more complicated. My sister has now told me that if I don't invite her to the wedding, I'll be ruining her reputation in the family. She says I'm being unreasonable and that I can't just exclude her for something so minor. So now, I'm stuck between trying to do the right thing and avoiding a huge family blowup. I don't want my wedding day to be a scene, and I'm terrified of her pulling something like that again. The big question. So here I am, asking myself, AITA for considering not inviting my sister to my wedding because of this fake pregnancy stunt? Part of me feels like I should just let it go, but I'm not sure that's the right decision. I don't want to reward her for her behavior, but at the same time, I don't want to completely cut her off. Honestly, I love my sister, but I'm not sure if I can risk her causing more drama on my wedding day. I just want it to be a day filled with love and happiness, not fake pregnancies and emotional outbursts. Chapter 10. So, I've been going through something recently that's been weighing on me a lot, and I really need to talk it out. It's been a tough call for me, and I'm not sure if I made the right decision. So, I'm turning to you all for some advice. Here's the situation. I've been best friends with this girl, Julie, for basically my whole life. We've been through a lot together, but recently, things got complicated, and I made a decision that now has me questioning myself. I'll give you all the details, but first, AITA for not inviting my girl best friend to Thanksgiving this year after she rejected me? Story begins. Let me start by giving you some background. Julie and I have been close friends since we were in kindergarten. Her parents passed away when she was really young, and she's been living with her aunt ever since. The thing is, her aunt doesn't really celebrate Thanksgiving, so for Julie, this holiday has always been kind of lonely. A few years back, I invited her to Thanksgiving for the first time and she loved it. It was actually the first time she'd ever experienced Thanksgiving with a family, and my parents absolutely adored her. Ever since then, inviting Julie to Thanksgiving has sort of become a tradition for us. Julie and I were always inseparable. We went to movies together, hung out after school, studied together, all that. And honestly, I started developing feelings for her. I thought we had this really special bond, and I began thinking that maybe there was potential for something more between us. It was hard because at the time, I wasn't sure how to navigate those feelings. I had no idea whether she felt the same way or not, but I thought we were close enough that it would be okay to ask her out. The rejection. So, last month, I finally worked up the courage to tell Julie how I felt. I asked her out, thinking she might feel the same way. But she was shocked, totally caught off guard. She told me that she had never looked at me that way and that what we had as friends was way more valuable to her than risking it by turning it into a relationship. She was really kind about it, and I know she didn't mean to hurt me, but honestly, I was crushed. I thought I'd misread all the signs. We'd been so close for so long, and I thought maybe there was something deeper there. Since then, I've definitely pulled back. I started distancing myself from her because I didn't know how to act around her anymore. I didn't want to feel that hurt every time I saw her or interacted with her. It felt like everything had changed between us, even though it probably hadn't for her. I tried to keep things cool, but I could tell I was struggling, and so was she. The Thanksgiving decision. Now, Thanksgiving rolls around, and it's the first one since I asked her out. I didn't want to invite her this year. The thought of having her over, seeing her again, and having to pretend like nothing had changed, when, for me, everything felt different, was just too much. So, I didn't invite her. Julie asked me about it. She noticed I hadn't reached out like I usually do and just flat out asked, "Are you inviting me to Thanksgiving this year?" and I couldn't give her a straightforward answer. I didn't want to hurt her, but at the same time, I couldn't be honest about the reason either. Eventually, she figured it out on her own. She was visibly upset, but she accepted it, and that was the hardest part for me. She didn't fight it, but I could tell it hurt her deeply, and I felt guilty about it. Telling my parents. So, Thanksgiving night rolls around, and my parents are asking about Julie, wondering why she's not there. I wasn't sure what to say, but I just told them the truth, that I didn't want to invite her this year. I didn't go into too much detail, but I think they could tell I was upset. They didn't press me about it, but I could tell they were concerned. The thing is, after everything that's happened, I started wondering, was I the asshole for doing this? I mean, Julie and I have been through so much together, and I really care about her. But after what happened last month, I couldn't handle having her there for Thanksgiving, pretending like nothing had changed. The internal struggle. So here's the dilemma. I loved Julie like a best friend, but after she rejected me, it felt like things were never going to be the same. I couldn't figure out how to go back to being just friends without all of this awkwardness hanging over us. I don't want to make things more complicated by having her at Thanksgiving, but I also don't want to hurt her or make her feel like she's being pushed out of my life. But at the same time, I'm not sure if it's even healthy for me to keep holding on to this idea that things can go back to normal. Maybe I needed some space. Maybe I needed some distance before figuring out how to handle our friendship. The question. So, here I am, wondering if I did the right thing. AITA for not inviting Julie to Thanksgiving after she rejected me? I don't want to seem like I'm punishing her for not returning my feelings, but I also don't want to force something that feels broken right now. I don't know how to balance these feelings of hurt, guilt, and the need for space. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. If you've ever been in a situation like this, how did you handle it? Should I have just invited Julie anyway and dealt with the awkwardness? Or was it fair to take a step back this year? I really need your advice on this one, and I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. That's it for today, folks. What would you have done in this situation? Drop your opinions in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. If you liked this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more, and don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. See you in the next one.